The other day we saw a presentation at the Hollywood Heritage Museum. It was one of the guys from the one guy from Adam 12, Kent McCord. And I'll be doing a video really soon about Martin Milner and including some of the footage from that. But one of the people that was there was Shaun Cassidy, and who was the son of Jack Cassidy. And one of the things that was there, they have a lot of costumes on display, classic Hollywood stuff. There's a lot of Lucy stuff and some Mae West stuff. And then they had a suit of Jack Cassidy's. And Jack Cassidy was like a fixture of 70s television and 60s. He was a Tony winner and an Emmy winner, I believe. He was certainly nominated. And he showed up on a ton of shows, Bewitched and Columbo. He was a really famous villain on these shows. And a lot of game shows, too, and some curious interactions on game shows or curious subjects came up.
She says, folks, I've got good news and bad news. Alan Ludden's on fire. The good news is I've got plenty of... Booze is the answer.
I said charcoal fluid.
He's also the father of Shaun Cassidy and of David Cassidy and of Ryan Cassidy and Patrick Cassidy. And he died in a fire in 1976 and is probably one of the most famous celebrity deaths, and certainly one of the ones that kicked off the whole sort of dark side of Hollywood interest was the death of Jack Cassidy in December of 1976. I've heard about it for a long time, and since I was a kid growing up, still in Detroit, and coming out here, it was a part of the original Graveline tour, passing by the place, telling the story of Jack Cassidy. And it was part of the Dearly Departed tour. And when we were making our first documentary, Dearly Departed Volume 1, we actually got into it. I met the people who own it, and via my friend Katie. And we met the people, and they let us in. We got to film inside the apartment the way it looked, well, when we made the documentary, probably 18 or 20 years ago now. It's been a long time. But we did actually get in, and here's footage from that documentary of the inside of the apartment where Jack Cassidy died.
Directly behind me is the apartment building where actor Jack Cassidy burned in a fire in 1976. Through a fortunate twist of fate, the owners of the condominium where Jack actually did die got in touch with me, and we got invited in.
Hello? Thank you. We're going to Jack Cassidy's apartment. I'm so excited, it's not even true. I've been passing this place for like 12 years, you know what I mean? I find somebody that lives here that gets it, you know what I mean? That understands that we're not vampires and not crazy people, we're just people interested in some things that are a little bit different. Hey! Hi, how's it going?
Good. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Apparently, as it is, Jack was out on a date, went to a Christmas party, went out to a couple of bars afterwards, probably pretty hammered when he returned home, lit a fire, fell asleep on his couch with a cigarette in his hand. Eventually, the couch engulfed in flames, and eventually he was engulfed in flames, and apparently tried getting out, and he was found right about here, or what was left of him was found right about here.
When we made this documentary, I still didn't know all the facts. I was so excited about being able to get into this place to see it for myself. I actually didn't know the facts about it so in detail, and since that time, I've actually obtained a copy of Jack Cassidy's autopsy report. And it's really quite interesting because, you don't hear a lot of the details about people when they burn in a fire. Be warned, because there are some really sort of gory details, nothing graphic visually, but by description, you're going to hear some pretty awful details of what happened to Jack Cassidy when he died. And a little bit of the background via this document. It's a really interesting document. It's handwritten. It's probably, it's from 1976. It's been generated, copied. So it's not completely clear. I tried my best to translate it, and I'm going to go into it now. So now at this point, okay, Jack Cassidy, the date of the fire was December 12th of 1976. It was 6:15 a.m. He was known as John Doe number 257 until they could identify his body, which I'll talk about very shortly. The address was 1221 North Kings Road, and that address is West Hollywood, technically.
Okay, so this building on our right at 1221, the top floor was Jack Cassidy's apartment when he died in 1976 in a fire in this building.
And it is its own, it is incorporated, but they don't have a police department. They didn't have it at that time, so they were patrolled by the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. Now, it was called the Los Angeles Sheriff's Office back in 1976. So the abbreviation they use is LASO in this. So, but the address 1221 North Kings Road, West Hollywood. And it was, it does mention here as next of kin being Shirley Jones, because he was married to Shirley Jones and he had children with Shirley Jones. She had custody of his children that she had with Jack Cassidy. For clarification, Jack was married twice. His first marriage was to Evelyn or Evelyn Ward, and they had a son named David Cassidy. His second marriage was to Shirley Jones. And Shirley Jones and Jack Cassidy had 3 sons, Patrick, Ryan, and Shaun Cassidy. So what confuses people sometimes is when the show The Partridge Family came out, Shirley Jones played his mother, but in reality, Shirley Jones was his stepmother. So a lot of people think that Shirley Jones was David Cassidy's mother, and that's not true. It was Evelyn or Evelyn Ward. Now here is the inspector's report. This is handwritten, so it's very it's really hard. It's not very legible. So I'll start. At approximately 6 a.m. on the 12th of December 1976, a private citizen called the fire department that the 4th floor of the building at 1221 North Kings Road, West Hollywood, was on fire. After the fire was controlled, the decedent was discovered, meaning Jack Cassidy, but they didn't know that at the time. He was discovered lying on the floor of the living room near the porch, or the balcony. Fire department personnel pronounced death at 6:15 a.m. It was surmised that the fire was possibly caused by a cigarette which started from the sofa and said living room. In the said living room, the whole unit was burned. A co-tenant stated that to the LASO, now the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department investigator, that he heard music coming from the scene at about 5:10 a.m. So about 50 minutes before that phone call was made about the fire, they heard music in his apartment. The scene was occupied by one Jack Cassidy, an actor and the president of Richmond Hill Productions, which is his own production company. LASO Detective Gleason will attempt to get a dental chart on Mr. Cassidy. It's not known if Mr. Cassidy, if the decedent, meaning Jack Cassidy, was drinking liquor, but there is a liquor bar in said living room at the scene. And according to most published sources, he was out that night at an Italian restaurant, his favorite restaurant. Shirley Jones claims that she was invited to have dinner with him that night, but she turned him down. Nanette Fabray, the actress Nanette Fabray, who was very close to Jack Cassidy, I've always heard that he was at a Christmas party with her, or they went to several Christmas parties. I guess this is all speculation. But for the most part, it does say that Jack was out at this particular Italian restaurant, his favorite restaurant, by himself. Now, this is after the dental charts, the impressions from his dentist or the x-rays were compared to the body of of the person they found at the scene. It says the comparison of the postmortem dental x-rays to John Doe 257 with the antemortem dental x-rays of Jack Cassidy supplied by Frank Greenbaum, the dentist, confirms a positive match. Therefore, John Doe 257 is Jack Cassidy. So that was signed also on that day by the medical examiner. Now, on this page, it says the unidentified person report. And it says the body is charred and not viewable. Not quite sure how that fits in. But age 49, the height is 69 inches, but I think it's 5'8" almost, 131 pounds. That was what was left of him. I'm sure that he weighed more than that, but 131 pounds is what arrived at the coroner's office. They usually, they have information here how they identified the body. Hair, nothing, charred. Mustache, beard, nothing, it's charred. They can't tell if there ever was one. Disfigurement or tattoos, nothing, charred. Clothes, no, charred. They did find, though, on the body, they had a bracelet, a rope design bracelet, which had a religious sentiment. It said, "Christ is life," engraved on it. And also a ring, which was a crest ring. I think it was gold. Oh, the wallet of the decedent was found as well in the apartment. I believe it was in the drawer of his dresser in the other room. So the coroner's office was on Mission Road at this point. It had already moved from downtown from the halls of justice. And the eventual cause of death is extensive thermal burns of the body. Black soot in the larynx, trachea, and bronchi. I've been finding clips of Jack Cassidy in different shows throughout the years, and there is a inordinate amount of fire references in these appearances, as you saw from the match game earlier, and I'll add a few more in here, but it's really, really fascinating how many fire references there are in Jack's appearances.
Wick. Five seconds.
Flame?
Nope.
Now, as far as the description goes of the body of the completely charred male, which weighs 131 pounds and measures approximately 69 inches in height. The age of the body is difficult to assess, but appears to be muscular and appears to be about the stated age of 49 years old. The bony structures of the head are those of a Caucasian male. The scalp is completely burned. The external plate of the skull is charred. The ears are completely charred. The eyes are also charred. The nose is charred, burned. The mouth is charred. The lower jaw shows only frontal teeth, and the posterior molar teeth are absent on both sides. The ante-mortem dental x-rays are completely matched with the post-mortem dental teeth. So the x-rays match the teeth of the body that they discovered. The neck organs show no evidence of traumatic injury in the hyoid bone and the thyroid cartilage. There is no evidence of traumatic injury to the neck. The chest shows complete charring of the skin, and the ribs are well preserved. There is no traumatic injuries to the ribs or spine. The upper extremities and the lower extremities show complete charring of the skin and muscles. The muscles are markedly contracted and the joints are flexed due to the contracture. There is no evidence of ante-mortem fracture of the bones noted. The abdominal wall shows complete charring with exposure of some of the small intestines, which are also charred. The internal examination of Jack Cassidy's body. The opening of the chest and abdomen show no evidence of traumatic injuries in the chest and abdomen. The organs are located in their normal anatomical position. No injury or hemorrhage is noted. The muscles of the chest and abdomen show slightly cherry red color. Now, the cardiovascular system is the heart area, and the heart is about normal in size. There are no thermal burns on the pericardial sac or heart. Sections of the heart show grossly normal architecture. The valves appear grossly normal. The aorta shows moderate arteriosclerosis with patchy areas of plaque in the abdominal aorta. Now, the respiratory system. The larynx, the trachea, and the bronchi contain a large amount of black soot mixed with mucus, indicating the body was alive and breathing at the time of the fire. The lungs are about normal in size. The surface of the lungs is smooth with normal lobulations. The mucus mixed with soot is also noted in the lung sections. Now, the liver is moderately enlarged and it weighs 2,300 grams. The capsule is smooth and the sections show mild fatty metamorphosis. The gallbladder contains approximately 20 cc's of normal bile. There is no cirrhosis in the liver. So there's been a lot of talk about Jack and his drinking and how that figures into this incident. And a lot of, everyone knew that Jack liked to party. Everyone knows that Jack liked a cocktail. Whether it was a ridiculous amount that night or not, I'll get to that in just a moment. But a lot of people did. It was the 60s. It was the 70s. It's what people, they did that back then, especially in show business. So it's not unusual that he was a drinker, but it shows there was no evidence of cirrhosis. The spleen is slightly enlarged and it weighs 220 grams. The capsule is smooth and sections show grossly normal architecture with moderate congestion. The lymph nodes and bone marrow are not remarkable grossly. The digestive system, the mouth and pharynx shows a small amount of black soot. The esophagus is clear. The stomach contains approximately 5 cc's of light brown fluid. The mucosa is not remarkable. The small intestine shows grossly normal architecture, except for the hilum, which is exposed through the burned surface of the abdomen. This portion shows partial third-degree burns. The appendix is absent. The colon shows no abnormality. So you could actually see the small intestine through his abdomen, which is pretty wild. The endocrine system. The pancreas, adrenal glands, and the pituitary gland show no injury or abnormality. The thyroid gland is charred and black. The kidneys are about normal in size. The external genitalia is charred. The musculoskeletal system. The entire body is charred, and the skin and muscles are externally charred, but there is no evidence of traumatic injuries or antemortem fractures. So they rule out if he was injured before the fire, in case, he got hurt before then, or if he fell, or if somebody, there was foul play involved. So they're ruling that out, and also saying that when they moved him, nothing happened when they moved him. There were no bones broken, although he was, charred. The head and central nervous system. This is something that gets a little bit gruesome. The scalp is completely charred. The external plate of the skull is charred, and the internal plate remains. There is marked epidural accumulation of boiled bone marrow substance, but there is no subdural hemorrhage. There is no indication of traumatic injuries in the head. The base of the skull shows no evidence of fracture or injury. The brain is about normal in size and it weighs 1,250 grams. It is markedly cooked in the superficial cortical matter. So certain sections of his were removed. Representative sections are taken for a hold jar. The entire body is x-rayed. Photographs are taken. Toxicology, the blood was submitted to scientists to analyze to see what was in his system at the time. And Sergeant Fisher of the Sheriff's Department witnessed the autopsy. So, okay, now this is a bit of information that's a bit of all over the place. I'm going to try to make Jack Cassidy, extreme thermal burns of the body. Photos, they checked for barbiturates and specimens submitted. Ruled as an accident. Evidence of injury, no. Was he at work? No. Was there a note that he may have done it to himself? No. There was no prescriptions found at the scene. He was a Caucasian, charred 131 pounds and 69 inches long. Hospitalized? No. So no hospital report. It is an accident from a house fire. And certain things were submitted. The brain cooked is what it says here. The epidural boiled and charred. Extensive thermal burns of the body, black coated trachea and bronchi. Now, what they did discover in his system when they did the blood test, I think this is Lystatin is what they found. It's really kind of hard to read, but that sounds like, it looks like Lystatin as best as I could tell, which is a cholesterol medication. Interesting because there were no prescriptions found in his house, at least none that they found. So if that's what showed up in the blood, then that's what showed up in the blood. Another thing that showed up, cyanide. Well, actually, no, they tested for cyanide. This is something I found very curious. So when they test for cyanide in a case of a burn victim, fire-related deaths, checking for cyanide, specifically hydrogen cyanide, is crucial because it's a toxic product of combustion that can contribute to death from smoke inhalation. So that's why they checked for cyanide, and it came back on the 20th as not determined. So cyanide was not found in his blood. They did check for alcohol, and he had 0.12% in his body, in his bloodstream. Now 12% is not a whole lot. At that point in California, now the legal limit is I think it's 8.8. And Jack was at 0.12. But back in 1976, the legal limit to operate a motor vehicle was 0.15. So it's changed considerably to 0.08, but Jack was lower than the legal limit, so he was 0.12. So that rules out, I think, the fact that he may have been hammered. And they didn't find any drugs in his system. So it just stands to reason, I think, that they say he was smoking. And most people agree. A couple of reports say there were cigarette butts strewn about the house. I think there was a bar at the scene, but again, he wasn't drunk. And that most people agree that what probably happened is that he was smoking on the sofa, listening to music. He fell asleep, and the cigarette rolled onto the sofa, fell out of his hand, and next thing you knew, the building, the whole thing just exploded into a fire. And there's evidence that he tried to get to the patio so he could get some air. If he'd gone in the opposite direction to the front door, he might have got out and might have survived. For some reason, he chose the other direction and he didn't make it. Now, I spoke to the LA County Coroner, my friend Craig Harvey. He's since retired, and this is what Craig told me. The fact there is soot in his mouth and pharynx, which is the membrane-lined cavity behind the nose and the mouth, connecting them to the esophagus, would tend to indicate that he was breathing during the fire and inhaled the smoke and soot. And when I told him the amount that was found was 10%, he said that's very minor and nowhere near fatal. So he was dead fairly quickly from thermal burns and the lack of oxygen in the apartment.
The password is oxygen.
10 points, Dennis.
Hydrogen.
Bomb?
Hydrogen bomb. Comment on our times. 9 points, Susie.
Breathe?
Oxygen?
Yes.
So he was aware enough to get off of the sofa and try crawling to get some air. And by that time, it was just too late. I mean, the whole place was up in flames. Here's a clip from an episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents in 1965, starring Jack Cassidy. And he plays a sinister photographer who straight out murders people and takes photographs of their death scene. And watch this. It's pretty incredible with relation to this case. Wild. They found the body. They didn't know who it was. His car was gone. They were hoping that he was actually gone, and it was some other person. His family, Jack Cassidy's family, was hoping that would be the case. And but since they found the wallet and the ring and the bracelet at the scene of the apartment, he was ultimately identified as Jack Cassidy. And after it was all settled, Jack actually had it in his will that he be cremated and scattered at sea. He had already had this all sorted out in his will. He left X amount of money to so-and-so and to so-and-so. And Jack Cassidy had left money for his sons, except David. He cut David out of the will, supposedly anger for something that David did, or I'm not quite sure why, but he made provisions for his other sons and his grandchildren, and I believe to Shirley Jones too, and to other friends as well. And I think Shirley Jones took kind of control. And Jack Cassidy's estate was actually sued by the people who owned the building, no, by the insurance company, because they had to pay out like $60,000 to have the unit repaired. I couldn't find a resolution to that, but I do believe that they sued for that. And also another claim on the estate were the actual funeral expenses, which took place at Westwood Memorial Park. So I don't know if his cremains, if his urn was there at the service at Westwood. It was a celebrity event. And I think, I know Eileen Brennan, Dennis Weaver, Milton Berle were there. And ultimately, Jack was scattered at sea, they say. Don't know that for sure, but that's what it sounded like. That was what he had in his will.
Believe it or not, Jack's funeral was one of the funniest events. It was like a roast that you could ever go to, because that's who Jack was.
Jack Cassidy, his cause of death ultimately was extensive thermal burns of body. He was cremated on the 15th of December at the Chapel of the Pines Crematory. He was not embalmed, obviously. And the death was ruled accidental and by house fire. So that's the story of Jack Cassidy. Tragic end, I can't imagine. I hope that he was passed out before he got to the burns, but that must have been just a horrific way to go. I mean, aside from like drowning, just realizing what's going on around you, it just has to be horrible.
Everything all right with you, Eddie? Yeah. Just wondered, I thought perhaps you might be losing your nerve.
Fire and safety precaution has grown by leaps and bounds since then. In 1976, about 3 months before Jack died, ironically, the Life Safety Code was passed by the U.S. National Fire Protection Association. It was the first document that stated that smoke alarms be required in every home. By 1980, an estimated 50% of all homes in the U.S. reported having working alarms. Since then, almost every home has smoke detectors and a fire extinguisher. Now, interestingly, on September 19th, 1996, there was a fire in the very building we were standing in when I took this footage of Jack Cassidy's suit on display. The fire charred the rear roof of the structure, while smoke and water damaged several movie antiques representing such legends as Charlie Chaplin and Valentino. It took 60 firefighters working to get the blaze under control and to cover the precious artifacts within. The building survived, and they are prepared for the future. Rest in peace, Jack Cassidy, and I hope your family are at peace. Since 1976, I'm pretty sure they're adjusted to it, but still a terrible thing. I heard that one of the sons was escorted through the apartment after the fire, but before they did cleanup. And it's like, I think he was like 12 years old at the time. It's like, could you imagine seeing that? I mean, first of all, dealing with the aftermath of your father, dying in such a horrific way, and also the mystery of who it was for the first sort of 12 hours or so. Nobody knew who it was. So the whole family was just waiting and worrying, and then to be escorted through the scene by, I just can't imagine how traumatic that must have been.
There's an old adage that says, handsome is as handsome does. And I want you to meet somebody who does very handsome, like Mr. Jack Cassidy.
Now, according to the people that still live in this house, Jack Cassidy's ghost is still in it. They saw it once. They had a guest in the guest room who woke up early one morning just as the sun was coming up, and Cassidy was leaning in the doorway watching this guest sleep. He claims that as soon as he saw him, Cassidy's ghost faded away. The current residents also claim that the previous owners moved out because they'd noticed his presence as well. Coming home one night, one of the residents that lives here now claims that they returned and all the lights, the sound system, everything was on, the projector, the movie screen down. They checked with an electrician who told them everything was on different circuit breakers, so there's no way this could have accidentally happened. They've also returned home several times and found that the shower had been used. The residents decided to appease Jack to make him a pleasant man. They acknowledged his presence by putting a photograph of Jack very appropriately behind the bar. It is awesome. Huh.
That's a great photo.
Yeah, it is.
After this, right here, Mike.
The fire hose. Yeah, Jack's fire hose.
And who cares?
I did.
What's that got to do with the real world? Men will go on, most of them, subject to fears, and so subject to powers and authorities. How do we change that slavery? Well, it's of man's very nature.
Is it?
You heard me.